who listen to my request and are coming and taking their place. I don't know, I wasn't really prepared to speak first because I thought after Professor Mohanty and Professor Vasan says something, then I'll be able to comment on it. But obviously our chairperson thinks that talking of feminine face of agriculture is relatively a simple matter, which one can begin with, and then one can talk of struggles, which is a real concrete thing in the end. Of course, it's not something new that, in fact, this whole idea that agriculture or the whole workforce is acquiring a feminine face was very dominant in academic discussion and debates during the 80s and early 90s. And then somehow it has so happened that what was expected has not come true. For instance, we were thinking when the neoliberal era in agriculture started that the men folk will leave and go because the farming activity is not viable enough. And especially, I'll just come to the land distribution and the kind of livelihood that agrarian sector people have. But because farm activity is not viable enough, so men will go migrate out, and agriculture will be dominated by women more and more. But the latest data of NSSO, which is 2010-11 data, which is saying that actually the proportion of women in agriculture has gone down. So that was really puzzling as to how it has happened. Actually, in absolute number, the number of women employed in agriculture has gone down. I think it was 100 and odd million to 84 million women are there in agriculture. So 20 million women are now not recorded in agricultural workforce, which is really surprising that how this kind of data has come up. My explanation, what I can think of about this data is that actually the beginning of the 21st century, when farming became non-viable and men started moving out, in 10 years' time they realized that there's nothing possible outside. So, in fact, the absolute number of men in agriculture has increased. So, they did not find any viable employment, and agriculture being a sponge sector, that when you don't have employment, like you cannot have employment in manufacturing beyond a certain level. So manufacturing has always absorbed about 10 to 15% of workforce. Otherwise, when you don't have employment anywhere, either you float into the service sector, where you earn nothing and your productivity is nothing, or you float back into agriculture, where again your productivity is small and your income is small. So the point is that in 10 years' time, we found that in the neoliberal framework, there has been no employment outside of agriculture, so men have been forced to come back to agriculture. And when men come back to agriculture, then women folk, they withdraw from the labor force. Because when they are not there, they are there as absentee workers, and when they come back, then they withdraw. That is one reason. Another reason is, of course, which I think later on, and which Anil started talking about, the control over resources. And the amount of land which is available for agriculture is rapidly going away. In fact, we did a survey, and NSSO data is little old, which is between 92, 93 to 2003 is the last data. Some 18 million hectares of land has gone out of agriculture. And of course, everybody has heard of land struggles and how state is forcing people out, and state is collaborating with corporate sector to force people out. And there is resistance to that. But one factor which is not so much noticed is how market is forcing people out of agriculture. Because your land is not viable, because you get an attractive price, you just give away your land and go out without anybody having to force you. So the fact is that land under arable land is rapidly declining, and also people outside agriculture do not have any employment, so they come back to agriculture. So to say the feminine phase, as it was going to grow bigger and bigger, has not become bigger. But whatever it is, the women in agriculture are, of course, disadvantaged lot. That is also said, the famous Bina Agarwal's formulation, dispossessed farmers and disadvantaged workers. That everywhere where they are working as cultivators, the land is not in their name, so they are just in household help as cultivators. And when they are working as wage workers, then the wages everywhere. We did a survey of 8 states of marginal farmers, and we found that in every state the women, agricultural women, earn much less. 50% of what agricultural men earn. Agricultural labor male earns. If a man is earning 60 rupees, 70 rupees, then woman is earning 35 rupees. And the only state where this difference was not there was Bengal. And then we found in Bengal that women in agricultural labor, the proportion was relatively small. Because when they are not very much cheaper, then people are not very much interested in employing them. So Kerala, which is a so-called left-governed state, and Kerala's also got a matriarchal tradition. In Kerala, the wages for women is 1/3 of the wages which are available for men in agricultural labor. So they have less, they are disadvantaged as far as wage work is concerned. And when they are working as a cultivator, a household cultivator, then they are essentially unpaid helpers in the cultivating households. So given this situation, what is, there's a lot one can talk about the disadvantage of women, but I feel that this disadvantage of women creates a potential for a very big force which can work towards changing the system. I'll give you some small examples. Like, for instance, I was reading a study in Punjab. I think you may have heard about that study. There was an article in EPW also by Ranjana Padi. She has studied the widows of the farmers who have committed suicide in Punjab. And we also surveyed Punjab as a state. And in Punjab, we find that caste is very important, one-to-one link up with land ownership. Like, all the land is owned by Sikh Jats, and anybody who's not belonging to that community is not owning. Scheduled caste, there is no land which is owned by scheduled caste, and even Sikhs who are not Jats, who take up Sikh religion belonging to scheduled caste, they also don't own land. So all the land is owned by Sikh Jats. Now we were doing the study of marginal farmers. So marginal farmers are actually there. They are not very well off, they are poor farmers, and a lot of them in Punjab have committed suicide because of small loan of less than 1 lakh, 60,000, 70,000 loan. They have committed suicide because they are not able to repay. Now these Jat women, the tradition and caste is that Jat women are not supposed to go outside and work. So, there is this caste hierarchy in land ownership, and then there is this cultural phenomena that women cannot work outside. So these widows, when she is interviewing them, they are saying that it is such a disadvantage for us that we belong to this Jat community because we are not allowed to work outside. We want to work because we have to look after our children, we have to look after the house, we want to work outside. So we want to break this caste barrier, the tradition and culture of women not being allowed to work, and we want to go out and work. So I feel, that from this point of view, to transcend the class barrier, women have a lot more potential than men have. Because they are in a disadvantageous position and they don't get advantage of belonging to a certain caste, but they are disadvantaged because of belonging to that caste, so they would like to transcend the caste barrier, which I found was a very interesting thing. Another instance that I was talking about to this Kerala thing, that in Kerala the wages for women, agricultural wages for women is very low. It's in the range of 150, and for men it is in the range of 300, 400 rupees. So as a result, there are lots of small farmers who find that they cannot hire labor because the labor is too expensive for them. So a lot of land is just lying fallow in Kerala villages. Lot of land is lying fallow because people have either moved out or they are there with the land, but they find it very difficult to cultivate it because of labor being very expensive. And I think that is a known thing, that paddy cultivation in Kerala has gone down very much. Now, in Kerala, in late 90s, this government community interface program of Kudumbashree Mission started. In Kudumbashree Mission, one of the program was that women would be encouraged to do farming. And women who are not having any land in their name, they form a small group, and that small group, 4 to 10 women, they lease in land from all those small farmers who are not able to cultivate their land. They lease in land, they work on that land, and they are able to take advantage of NREG, which the menfolk have totally rejected, because NREG is paying, I think in Kerala, 160 rupees or 170 rupees now. So 170 rupees is not at all attractive for men, but it is very attractive for women. So they lease in land and they use NREG program to work on their own land and get NREG wages. They also use NREG program to hire women workers in their land and use NREG wages. And I have found villages after villages where all the fallow land has been taken up by these women's group under Kudumbashree Mission. So I feel that, NREG, which is of no use in Kerala, which did not take off in Kerala because the Kerala wages were already high, has been made use of by these women. Now you see these women who were earlier not into any operation, agricultural operation, they didn't have any land. First of all, they formed group. So they have realized the strength of collective. Wherever I went, I have gone to whole lot of districts in Kerala, and I have found women very happy because they are together. They feel very happy being together, and they feel that they have done so much. They have acquired so much of confidence. So Mallapuram is the district where all the Muslim women are there with burqas. They said we never stepped out of our house. But now we are together and we can talk to any block development officer, we can go to the Trivandrum, we can talk to minister, we can talk to any district official, and we can demand what we want. So women getting together because they were earlier not having any property in their name. They were not having any land in their name, so their getting together is much easier than men getting together who have small pieces of land. So as Anil said, that when we were doing the study of agricultural marginal farmers, and it's not just my conclusion, anybody who has studied marginal farmers all across the country will find that I said I will talk about land distribution. The average land, actually the whole rural community, which is dependent on agriculture for their livelihood, 40% of the households, 40% of the rural households don't own any land other than homestead. Only 60% of rural households have what is called farmland. And out of those 60%, about 80% households are owning less than 1 hectare of land. And about 10% households are owning between 1 to 2 hectares of land. So there are 90% households who are into the category of marginal and small farmers amongst those who own farmland. 40% are there who don't own farmland. So this is the situation of land availability in our country. And average land holding is 1.06 hectare. So even if you do all the land reform, even if you stop agricultural land going out of agriculture just now into other sectors and do all the land reforms, still you will not have a household, average household will have only 1.06 hectare of land. Now 1.06 hectare of land is not viable by itself. That is also NSS survey, that for farm operation to become viable, that is for a household to be able to get enough earning from that farm activity, the land size should be minimum 2 to 4 hectares, given the fact that lots of land does not have any water available. So in most states, 2 to 4 hectares of land is necessary if the household wants to get sufficient income from the farm to be able. Otherwise, they have to supplement their income by wage income. And every household which has less than 1 hectare of land also, firstly, it gets insufficient income, and secondly, it has surplus labor. Because the labor available in the household is not required for a small land of 1 acre, 0.5 acre, 0.3 acre. So there's surplus land which goes out for wage work, which gets exploited over there, and there is insufficient income. So I feel that the whole agrarian crisis is not just a matter of corporate being stopped from taking land away. It's not just a matter of farmers getting enough debt, proper institutional debt. It is not just a matter of agricultural output getting proper pricing. It is not just a matter of agricultural input being available to farmers at proper pricing. The agrarian crisis cannot be solved unless this whole question of land is solved. And the question of land essentially being that the rural households whose livelihood is dependent on this land are far too many for the land available in the country. So for agrarian crisis to be solved in this country, it is necessary, it is absolutely necessary that labor finds non-farm, productive, profitable activities outside of agriculture. And for doing that, and for not allowing corporate to go ahead with this section, it is necessary that labor collects together. A collective production base is formed in which not only land is pooled, but surplus labor is also pooled, so that this surplus labor can then be in a planned way shifted out into non-farm activity. That I feel is my analysis of agrarian crisis. And for doing that kind of a transition, I feel women play a very important role because they don't own land, so collecting them is much easier. They are much more amenable to a collective work. And as I said, they can transcend caste barrier much faster than men. And therefore, this potential of women who are there in agriculture as disadvantaged section should be used for transiting from this system to a more just and equitable system. Thank you.